Thank you.
No problem.
We usually bring up scouts, because we always get scouts here.
Oh, like Boy Scouts?
Yeah, when they're here for their citizenship merit badge, and they'll be in the audience, and we'll ask them to come up and have one of them give them the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they'll all introduce themselves. But in the summertime, we don't get very many scouts.
Yeah.
They just come down during school, usually.
Good evening. We would like to call the June 15th, 2017 council meeting to order. The time is 7 o'clock. I look to Councilmember Anderson to assist us with this next portion. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me first ask, are there any scouts that are here tonight that are attending? Okay. I'd like to introduce Mayor Samuel Sprague, who's a junior at Desert Ridge High School, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I want you all to know that he is here voluntarily. This is not a community service or court-assigned appointment, and he's in a suit. Very interested in municipal government, and that is leadership right there in action. So thank you for being with us today. At this time, we'd like to invite Pastor Rick Furmanek from Evident Life Church to the podium. Pastor, yes, there. Oh, no, Doc. Oh, I didn't see the change. Pastor Thor. I'm sorry, I didn't read my on the dais changes. Pastor, you're always willing to help us and doing a lot. Maybe you want to put a little plug in for the car show in November as well while you're there.
All right, we can do that. First of all, thank you, Mayor Daniels and Vice Mayor Peterson and the rest of the council, and then all of you folks right here for having me back again. It is my pleasure to be here representing Valor Christian Center right here in Gilbert. And before we go on to that topic right there, I think in the light of what happened yesterday in Alexandria, Virginia, that where Mr. Scalise and the others were injured, we need to lift them up in prayer tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. With your permission, may I use a piece of scripture to back up what I'm about to say? In the Bible, it says in 1 Timothy chapter 2, starting with verse 1, Timothy says, I exhort therefore that first of all supplication, prayers, intercession, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in godliness and honesty. For this is a good and acceptable will in the sight of God and Jesus Christ, our Savior. You know, we never know when something may happen that threatens our lives. You never know. You don't even know. You have no guarantee of tomorrow. So tonight, as we pray, let us lift up these people who have authority and the people who are here representing authority over us here locally. And we need to be ready at all times. And if you're not, you can see me later. I'll make sure you're ready. Father, in the name of Jesus, I just pray. I pray for the city council tonight and all the decisions that are about to be made. I thank you, Lord, you give them wisdom beyond their years in making the decisions concerning this wonderful community that we live in. For those who were injured yesterday, we lift them up to you. I pray for supernatural healing for those that are in the hospital, Father. Lord, I ask you just to touch them today from the top of their head to the soles of their feet. Meet every need, spirit, soul, and body. And Father God, we'll be careful to give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory for it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and amen. Speaking of the car show, We have a wonderful car show coming up October the 28th this year, and if you are a car enthusiast, please come and be a part of our car show. This year, we're instituting something new and different. I have encouraged them to have a mayor's trophy this year. So in honor of Mayor Daniels, she will be coming to the car show. She's going to pick her favorite car. It'll be a separate and distinct trophy that will be awarded, and it's going to be in honor of you and for helping us out in the car show. And by the way, the benefit for the car show will be the Soldier's Best Friend. And what they do is they take animals that are rescue dogs, they rehabilitate dogs so that they can rehabilitate our veterans. So the money is going to be going to that organization from the car show. Thank you, Mayor, so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. There was a little joke up here in case you didn't hear it, that whatever car has to see at least 7. So now you know. Apparently they all want a seat in the vehicle. All right. The clerk will now conduct the roll call.
Mayor Dan Daniels.
Here.
Vice Mayor Victor Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Scott Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Eddie Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan Ray.
Here.
Councilmember Jared Taylor.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you very much, Lisa. At this time, it's communication from citizens, and all members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town that are not on the actual agenda. So I look to Vice Mayor Peterson to conduct this portion of the meeting.
Mayor, we have one request to speak by Lisa Gusick. And Lisa, we invite you up. I don't think it's your first time, and we're missing your husband tonight. Usually he's the one here. But just as a reminder, please state your name for the record, and also whether or not you are a Gilbert resident. And you'll look to the lights for your cues. You'll have 3 minutes. When the light turns yellow, that's 30-second warning. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm a Gilbert resident, parent, registered voter, and a nationally board certified teacher. Today is my birthday. And instead of being out with my family and friends celebrating, I'm here to draw your attention to an issue crucial to the town and its success. Over the years, I've noted your work to draw new restaurants, shops, companies, and more to Gilbert. It's a fantastic time to be in Gilbert. And now there are plans to create new parks and hire a tourism expert. The housing market is booming, and Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the nation. But the growth incentive that has been neglected and is a vital piece of our economy is kind of weighing on my mind. It's our educators, the ones who prepare our future workers, voters, and taxpayers. Educators are leaving classrooms. Most state officials appear fine with the budget that underfunds schools, but as town leaders who know that the largest employer in Gilbert is the public school system, it is clear that you must get involved at the state level. You have the clout and the influence, and it's time to use that influence to address the teacher shortage. So when employers consider moving here, a strong public school system factors into that decision. Over 2,000 teacher positions were unfilled last year. Some of those were filled by 980 long-term subs. Our kids deserve better. A recent local example of this impact is Miss Aldridge, a Gilbert teacher who wrote her farewell on education on Facebook last week. She wrote, "I dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's, packed up, cried my eyes out, weighed the pros and cons, so I guess it's time to make it Facebook official. I begin a new career in the educational software industry at the end of June. I'm filled with gratitude to this open door. Over the course of 6 years back in the classroom and a total of 9 years, I have worked with some of the most amazing teachers and administrative staff Arizona has to offer during my years in Sorita School District, in Gilbert Public Schools, and at Santa Cruz Unified. It's been a very bittersweet realization that I would indeed need to make a change simply due to the lack of income as a teacher, not because I didn't love it. I gave my heart to this profession and the students I had the pleasure to teach and guide over the last 6 years. It was heartbreaking to pack up my classroom full of memories into a few boxes. I will continue to support public education teachers, administration, and the rise of teacher salaries in the state of Arizona. I hope you will too. We desperately need to do more for our teachers and the students they serve. So that's her letter to the Facebook. Town Council, we need your help. You heard her to plea. We need you to get involved at the state level to problem solve. It's leaders like yourself. If you're okay with the state funding at 14% under inflation when the town of Gilbert is spending above, what is the legacy you want to leave behind? Is it just shops, restaurants, and businesses? Or, as a town, do we want to leave a legacy of well-educated students that will live on to create and maintain a prosperous town and state that you were proud to have been a part of? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Happy birthday. That is a good birthday message, and we appreciate that very much. We'll now move to the consent calendar. Vice Mayor Peterson, has anything been requested to be pulled from consent?
Yes, Mayor, and there are some requests to speak as well. So items 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 10 have been requested to be, sorry, I repeated 10 twice, it's just 10. Those have been pulled, but other than that, I'm ready to make a motion, Mayor.
Terrific. Let's entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve items 1, 2, 3. Items 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, continuing items 14 and 15, and 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Ray. Just for future note, items 14 and 15 have been continued to date certain on June 29th of our council meeting. So with that, please vote. That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Agenda item 4.
Well, Mayor, I know that there are a couple of council members that want to speak. At least there may be more. And we also have a member of the public who would like to speak on that item. Would you like to proceed?
Let's proceed with a member of the public and then bring it back to council.
Okay, Mayor, we have Tom Freestone who would like to speak on item number 4. Tom, if you come on up and just state your name and whether or not you are a Gilbert resident for the record. Most of us know that, but for the record, we still need that. You'll have 3 minutes, and again, a yellow light means you have 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
I was kind of hoping if there was any opposition, but I'd like to just point the experience out of the various public offices I held over nearly 50 years. I first became aware of nonprofits in 1978 when I first went on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. Now, when they said nonprofit, I thought they were talking about my business. It had been a nonprofit for so long that even the IRS was feeling sorry for me. I started going out and finding out about nonprofits. And the best way I could make a decision was hands-on, find out for myself, quit asking, seek, find, and get all the data together. I talked the board into going with nonprofit, was the first with Mark Center for the mentally handicapped, the deaf and blind. We allocated for those organizations $2.5 million, just barely carried on the board. We had a human resources department that was not an employment at that time, that had a budget of $69 million that did a lot of these things themselves that was brought out at that time. I tell you of truth, I was hoping we would save the $2.5 million. We saved $42 million. Well, provided and needs services. One thing that we always have to remember in nonprofits, we have good politicians, we have bad ones. We have good policemen, we have bad ones. We have good teachers, we have bad ones. It's up to us in officialdom to sort those out, which one will best serve the community. And I would say, looking at this site and knowing it for some time, being born and raised in this area, is that is an ideal place for it and is a good use. I tell you, there has been no more suffering than I've seen since, regardless where you stand on the issue of Obamacare, many have lost the people who are in their lower incomes up to medium incomes have lost their insurance, particularly dental, which is so expensive. There is nothing worse than have a child go without proper dental health. Now, I'm not keeping track of the time. I see you looking at the clock. Am I out of time? Oh, okay. You'll let me know when you do. So I would encourage that the council would move forward on that. I like field answers better than giving talks because I never know what you are really looking for in this project. All I say that anything that we do not use in our community goes somewhere else, probably going to be placed in doing some type of service that you and I would spend a lifetime fighting against. When you have it in your own community, you can design it by contract and how it should function, the do's and don'ts. When I say how to function, that's what you allow to take place in those buildings, and so you have a tight string on it. I think it'd be a great benefit. It also falls in line with your need assessments. Reason we have these need assessments is to put us into direction of fulfilling the services that is needed in our area. Did I talk too much? My wife says I do. Okay.
There you
how
go.
You do it. Scare me to death. You didn't warn me.
Wisdom accepted. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Is there any questions anybody like to ask?
Any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
must not have made much of an impact.
You have, and you continue to. Tom Freestone, most of you know Freestone Park. It's because of the great contributions Tom has made both to our community and our region. So we continue to be grateful for his leadership. Thank you. I'd like to council members for contribution on this. Perhaps we'll start here on the left, Jared, if you have anything to add, council dialogue.
Mayor, thank you. And it's so fun to see you, Tom. One of my favorite parts of the town is the bench that says Tom and Phyllis Freestone, families are forever at Freestone Park. I just love that. I make a point of looking at that every time I take my family over there. It's wonderful. So thank you for that. And you and I have had multiple conversations on this particular topic. And so a couple of thoughts just to share here. One of the things that I have some reservations on this for is because we don't really have a defined strategy here. So to put $1,001 to something that really hasn't been defined makes me a little bit nervous. And then the other thing is it does get us more into the business of social services, whereas there's other agencies that are actually more set up for success. And Tom, you know, at the county, you really pioneered so much of that. And then we have a lot of nonprofits. We're in a nonprofit 2.0 world where there is much better fundraising apparatus. And so one of the major reservations with CBDG, as you've heard me say before, is we lose local control, right? Because with shekels come shackles. And I know we have dropped the word wellness center, but it's in all the descriptions, so that's pretty much the direction that this is going to go, and that's really the only thing that'll fit. Let me give an example of one of the things. I know other people have heard this. When we say nonprofits have evolved to pick up a lot of this, like we've talked about a pregnancy center or some service in here, well, we just had one open a couple of, like within 2 miles away from where this would happen. There's other social services in this area, so that's another one of the concerns is we would probably be duplicating things that are already in our community that are privately operated, some with public contribution and things like that. So there's some couple of things that I think we need to sort out before we make this commitment. A couple of things I'd like to throw out for us to think about. I know we're not going to be able to act on it tonight, but are there some people that we can RFP this to clear out cell? And that'll give us the control, as we heard, is important for us to say this is what's important for our community and define that, put those parameters around it in that RFP process. But it puts it on their books and allows them to run with it. Or can we partner with the county that already has a developed infrastructure on this that we don't have? And I'm not sure that we want to get on that slippery slope to really invest in that. I'd like us to think about that, but for me, it's a little bit premature on this, just given all the discussion. Certainly appreciate all the discussion. I know we're going to talk about it more, but those are some initial thoughts, Mayor. Thank you for the time.
Just a couple of thoughts. First, I'd like to ask Melanie to come up to the podium. I'd like to ask, as she's coming up, just to comment that I think when the use of CDBG funds comes up, I can't think of a better use of those funds. I'd rather put those funds into something like this that is directly going to impact lives versus something that's a little bit more nebulous when we're putting in sewers and things like that that can touch lives, but not as directly as this can. So I think in that manner, it's very good. To follow up a little bit on what Jared was talking about, Melanie, could you answer, would the improvements that are going to be done to this building, would it restrict the types of uses that could go into that building?
Mayor, Councilmember Anderson, the use of CDBG funds, the block grant funds, does commit us to providing eligible activities to our residents and community, which means that we will serve the low and moderate income population, at least 51% of the services provided within the building. However, that does provide for quite a bit of flexibility as to what those services can be and would be within the facility.
Mm-hmm. And do we have any survey work that you've done maybe, or someone else that has indicated that there are services, as Jared was mentioning, that might be duplicated in the town here, or maybe they're offered outside of the town that would be appropriate in that building? Have we looked at that yet?
I'm just going to, interject really fast, because what we have before us is just construction contract and not anything about use. I think what Melanie's saying is that if we use CDBG dollars, that there would have to be CDBG eligible activities going on in the building, not that we would necessarily be the providers of those, but that is restricted to that. The way you get out of that is you can repay CDBG dollars to the federal government if we decided to alternate the use. So it's not locking us in, if you will, but it does allow us to get out of that if we, because this building really isn't useful unless it's remodeled. We've all come to that very solid conclusion. So sorry for interrupting, Scott, but I just don't want us to delve into use tonight.
I'm probably wandering a little bit.
Thank you.
But I would make a comment that I think in the long run, being the owner of that building rather than possibly selling that building is really an advantage for us, because we would control that much more than if we were to sell it, and then we become the regulators, not the owners. So thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
So I have a follow-up on that, and it's going to cross a little bit what you said, not to go to, Jen, but I think it helps make this decision. Mayor Daniels, I apologize. So I know we had an RFP with a couple of different groups. This went out for proposal for different groups, whether it was Ascend, whether it was Gilbert Can, whether it was Mercy Gilbert, who all expressed interest in using this facility to offer services. And I know that we are going to go out to RFP again based on that. But my question becomes, if we do this, we then have to have 51% of the use following the CDBG rules. Is there a time frame to do that? Meaning, if we remodel this, we pay the $1 million plus, and we can't come to terms with one of these other groups or multiple groups, at what point do we then have to pay that back or offer it as a town?
Mayor, Councilmember Ray, there isn't an established timeline through HUD that indicates that there has to be an immediate use. However, we already do have the opportunity to work with our Gilbert CAP office, which is our community action program, and this would be an ideal location for them to provide the services that they already do here in Gilbert for our residents, and they would be immediately available to utilize that location.
Okay, back in order. Sorry, Bridget. Councilmember Peterson.
We're on a first-name basis tonight. Mayor, I think that Mr. Freestone said it very well, that we can design it by contract when it's in our area, and we do need to make the changes and do the renovations in order to be able to invite the groups in and know how it's going to be laid out and what's available to those groups. And I've even suggested that because we have the potential to have the park across the street, that would like a second phase for veterans offices. Maybe in the meantime, if the park opens and they don't have the offices yet, maybe this would provide a space for veterans to go and do those the things that they want to do in the offices across the street once that park is able to do that. So I'm in support of this. We've heard from Mr. Freestone. We've heard from Howard Morrison, who's a long-standing member of this community, very long-standing member, just like Mr. Freestone. We've heard from the Chamber of Commerce in support. And I think that we are 3 years down the road since that needs assessment, and it's time for us to move forward to make some of those adjustments and needs in the community.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Peterson.
Mayor, I appreciate the comments tonight, and I know that there's different perspectives on this. I really do respect that. CDBG has been a difficult conversation for this council for a long time, and I know there's a desire to put those funds in Gilbert one way or another, and there are a limited number of ways you can do that and still qualify. So, and I just, my thoughts are very similar to Councilmember Taylor's. And I've heard that we still haven't decided on a specific use. However, it seems like our options are pretty limited based on those CDBG requirements, as well as we have a proposed design here. It's going to be constructed. And as a builder, I know there's only so many things you can do once something is built. There's some flexibility, but my view is that this will end up a wellness center. And as Councilmember Taylor said, we're going to be expanding social services here in Gilbert through the town. I support that privately. I support that outside of government. I don't want to be involved in that, though. I don't think that's our role. I think in the long run, it will end up a significant taxpayer liability. I've seen too many examples of how something starts out, even privately funded with the town involved in partnership, and then when those private funds or supports fall out, there's an immediate proposal for the taxpayers to fill it in. So rather than saving taxpayer dollars by bringing this here and doing this, I think in the long run it'll do just the opposite. My view, and again, I'm sure others wouldn't characterize it this way, but my view is that this will end up growing the welfare state right here in Gilbert. And I don't want to see us go down that path. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
We've talked about this wellness center / Page Park for years and years and years. So I will try to be brief. I understand that tonight we're simply voting on whether or not we do the construction, which I'm okay with moving forward on the construction. Like I've said, and members of this council have also said, I do not want the town to ever run this facility or pay for this facility, and I get that's not the vote tonight, but I just want to reiterate that when we get to the next step of entertaining RFPs and talking with the different nonprofits who want to run this, I just want to make sure that there's no preconceived notion that I would support the town running it. I look forward to handing it off to somebody else, whether that's we sell it to them or whether that's they run it and they pay for it, et cetera. So I'm okay with moving forward. I know we have some time constraints with the CDBG funds, but I want to just make that clear for the future based on who's going to occupy it and who's going to run it.
Thank you. Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, this is really about construction. I know that we would be talking about the potential RFQ and RFP in some later date. We're not obligated to put a user into that property at this time. In fact, I think when's the potential of the construction that could be done, Melanie, as to when we might be able to put some organization in there?
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, if we began construction here at the end of June, early July, we anticipate being done at the end of February of 2018 with the building available by around March of 2018.
Right. So we have plenty of time to, go through a process as it relates to an RFQ, RFP. If we sell the property, which, I'm in favor of, any of those monies would be potentially returned back to the federal government and so forth. As it relates to a potential use, I know that I did have a discussion of a potential user, about a year ago. It was the folks over at the St. Vincent de Paul that provided free dental care. It was a free service. They would not charge. It was no dollars other than that they would come in and provide that service. I just find it hard if an organization that's going to provide that type of free service to the unfortunate in our community, I mean, that's a type of kind of use I see that could happen. Again, that's another discussion, for a later date here in the future. So again, I'm in favor because it's really about a construction project.
Thank you very much. And when I so rudely interrupted Councilmember Anderson, I think I made my piece. So at this time, we will entertain a motion. Anyone?
Mayor, I move to recommend approval of item number 4, A and B.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. That moves us to agenda item number 5. Thank you, Melanie, for all your work. She already disappeared. Smart girl. Agenda item 5.
Mayor, I had some comments, but I'll look to see if there were others that did too on this one. Looks like Councilmember Taylor did.
Go ahead. You can begin, Vice Mayor.
All right. So I spoke with Jack Gierak on this, and I really appreciate the work he's done on it. I am not saying that there isn't a need for some improvements to the Muni One Center. In particular, I think we need insulation in this building. We really don't even have any. So as far as an energy efficiency and cost to the taxpayer, that's a problem. But I'd rather see us invest in actual improvements. Maybe we even talk with some private sector builders or consultants, not my company. I'm talking about me. I'm guessing there are people, just to be friendly to the town, would be happy to consult on a pro bono basis. We could consolidate and get some feedback, get some ideas, just with some legwork and some participation from those who'd be happy to help. I just think there's a lot of money to spend on just consulting. We could invest that in insulation and be so far ahead right away. And I just don't see the ROI case here. Maybe there is a case, but I don't have the data, and I'd like to see that analysis before I support something like this.
Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you for the time. I'm not going to repeat. I agree with a lot of what was said there. I bet you if we get a couple of builders in here to take a look at it and understand what we're trying to accomplish, we could probably do it for free. We have all these consulting contracts. Consultants will kind of write what you ask them to write or you pay them to write. But I think we can do this for free. Maybe I'm just a little price sensitive here because we've got the budget discussions coming up, but I just don't think this is a necessary. We could do it locally here for less cost.
Thank you. Is Jack here? Or Jacob, you want to take this one? Jacob and Jack, that's a team. Just to get some clarity here, there's some, I think, an anticipation that we could get somebody to come in and do a technical assessment for us for free. Could you please comment to that?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. As you know, this building's 25 years old, and components are beginning to wear out. You're also aware that there was at one time a future plan to look at a third building on our campus. We have no intention of bringing that plan forward, period. But there is a need to look at how we could better maximize use of the space. And so certainly there is a technical aspect of this project that looks at our components and assesses life cycle, looks at efficiency. We're also looking at how to better functionally plan the building and maximize use of this space. So this goes beyond just a typical construction or trades type of a project. That looks at all of those components anywhere from ceiling insulation, as Councilmember Peterson mentioned, but we'll also look at life cycling different components to maximize when we do undertake repairs that we are doing that in the most efficient, effective, economical way possible. So it's a little bit bigger than just a technical assessment only that you would use perhaps some contractors for in an attempt to try to plan long-term to fit as many people comfortably as we can into this building so that we're not looking at more expensive options in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for that update. Yes.
Mayor, thank you. Well, Jacob, thanks for the update. I know you're a little bit new to Gilbert, but Gilbert has an incredible talent base here. And we have in spades the same amount of talent that any consultant can come in here. Sure, we have lots of trades, and they're as talented as some of these people here. So I'm not sure that we can say we don't have anybody here that can creditably do this. But these people, if you get out a little bit more, these are unbelievably credentialed, talented, professional people at all levels, from the white to blue collar. And I bet you'd be surprised. I'd love to work with you on the project here. So thank you, Mayor.
Just for clarification, I didn't hear him say that we didn't have talent in Gilbert to be able to use, for all I know, we are using a Gilbert talent. How many square feet is this building? Does anybody know? about 40,000 square feet. So we'd be asking a volunteer, a business owner perhaps, to come in and do a 40,000 square foot assessment of a commercial building for free.
Mayor, if I may, these people in Gilbert do million square foot projects.
For free?
I'm just saying they have the credentials to do it, so a 40,000 square foot project wouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm just saying we have talent here that can help.
Councilmember Ray.
Jacob, how was this firm selected?
I'm going to call Jack up. He can speak to the procurement side of it.
Thank you, Jacob. Mayor Daniels, Councilmember Ray, Jack Girak, CIP. The consultant which we picked was selected from our on-call list, and we have been very strategic about it. The consultant has architectural background, as well as brought some other support on board in terms of some systems such as plumbing, electrical, HVAC systems, as well as we spent some time to select some outfit which will help us a little bit with some design aspect on a conceptual level. Thank you.
So did we go out for an RFP or RFQ on this, or did we just choose who we thought was best?
Mayor Daniels, Councilmember Ray, we picked from on-call, we didn't go for RFQ. We had it, we also conducted some interviews as well. Thank you.
Mayor, the bottom line for me is that there's no ROI case here. I'm not saying there isn't an ROI. I'm saying there's no case. As policymakers, decision makers, we don't have the information, in my opinion, to really tell if we're going to have the return on investment for the taxpayers with this expenditure. It's a lot of money just for consulting. We're not actually going to even do any real work on improving the building at that point. So again, and I think it is worth asking around in the community to see who would help with certain parts of this project, just to be friendly and neighborly to the town. So anyway, that was my comment.
Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. The question to Jack and Jacob. You know, when I was the liaison to the ECAB, the Environmental Board, we had the folks from Arizona State University actually come in and do an assessment on a number of our municipal buildings. Was some of your analysis based upon that report by chance? Because that was done for free as a graduate project. And I do know from their assessment as it relates to the windows, the insulation, the cooling, heating of this building, I think we got a really, really bad letter grade, if I remember correctly, in that report. And that was done, you know, like 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm thinking that assessment was done by, you know, again, it was volunteered by graduate students that are involved in that particular field. But quick question: Did that land on your plate there to review that report that we did a couple years ago?
Mayor and Council, certainly the information from that report has been discussed by staff. Windows, ceiling insulation, all of that has been sort of the underlying foundation for the need to go and start doing specific assessments to be able to then put together a plan of action to address those items. We know that there are those deficiencies, and that information is widely known.
Yeah, and I believe, Mayor, this particular building got the worst grade, if I remember correctly. I think the newest building, which is Muni 2, got the best grade out of the buildings here in the campus, but yeah, we didn't do too well here, so.
I think our employees actually know that better than we do firsthand. So, yeah. Based on the assessment that we will be getting back, report back, will that give us an ROI? Some of the low-hanging fruit, and then also some of the
Mayor Daniels, that is absolutely the goal of this report. We want to produce a really good decision-making tool and start with low-hanging fruits like you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I think we've all said our piece. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Peterson. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7.
Mayor, we didn't have any council members that I was aware of that wanted to speak on this, but we did have one request to speak from the public, if you'd like to hear that now. Eric Frawley, if you'd come forward. You'll have 3 minutes, and please state your name and whether or not you are a Gilbert resident for the record, please. And the yellow light means 30 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Frawley. I am not a Town of Gilbert resident. I am here today to talk about item number 7 regarding the decision to move approval for automated side loaders, 6 vehicles. I'm really just here tonight to bring some light about the other options that are available out on the industry. It's an option that the Town of Gilbert is currently using right now for some of its product types. That option is McNeilus. Throughout the past 12 years, McNeilus has been serving the Phoenix market along with 30 other manufacturing direct branches across North America. We are a leader in the industry, and we have been servicing the refuse market for whole goods, aftermarket parts and service for that time as well. McNeilus started in 1980, in which we were starting to develop our national service centers across the country. We've had a consistent presence in this area amongst all sectors, government, private, and public. Our products have shown to be a consistent value in the Town of Gilbert fleet, from the front load to rear load trucks. We are known in the industry, particularly in the Town of Gilbert, as a bulletproof and cost-effective truck. We have maintained a steady and honest approach to our business strategy, all while continuing to be that leader in safety and innovation. We are here tonight to decide on yet another vendor for automated refuse collection vehicles. It seems that the Town of Gilbert is looking for a solution that will provide consistency in how the solid waste division operates. Some of you may know that there are only 4 types of garbage collection vehicles: front load, rear load, side load, and roll-off. The Town of Gilbert currently uses 2 of those 4 types from McNeilus. This is to decide on a 3rd. I am here tonight to state that McNeilus has the ability to end the Town of Gilbert's cycle of throwaway garbage bodies and provide the correct solution for the citizens of the Town of Gilbert. I'm not expecting to change any hearts and minds tonight, but simply state that we have been here and will remain here in the Town of Gilbert to provide a solution and end the cycle of refuse bodies that has been occurring. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If we could invite a staff member to come forward this time. And you'll probably have to introduce yourselves, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I could call you by name.
I'm Lee Topic. I'm the new fleet manager.
Oh.
Frank Flores, Environmental Services Manager.
Thank you. There's obviously been some changes and clarification through this contract, and we mentioned, or the individual mentioned, front and rear loaders, but not side loaders. And these are side loaders, correct? Okay.
That's correct, Mayor.
Anything we need to know as far as what the decision point was for you as you made this recommendation to the council?
Mayor and council members, and we went through a process as far as demoing the McNeilus trucks as well as the AMRAP trucks, and in the process, feedback from our operators as well as looking at references that we made with other municipalities that currently use both types of equipment, and cost was a factor in our decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that insight. Does any other Councilmember Cook?
Mayor, thank you. You know, one of the best practices I believe that we've adopted here in the town is standardization, especially when it comes to parts and so forth. And, you know, when you look at the Southwest airline model and the efficiency that they provide with their industry and what they do, having a single type of airplane with parts that are interchangeable, you know, pretty easily does provide tremendous efficiency. And I know that it has been really kind of the model here in the town of Gilbert, you know, to keep that kind of efficiency in place. So I guess the question would be, why the deviation from our current fleet versus a different model? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that we might have two different types of trucks that might, you know, not put us in that standardization? I guess that would be the question I'd like to ask.
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, we have multiple ASLs, or the automated side loaders today. That's one of the problems. We'd like to move forward standardizing and beginning with this this model. Today we have a Peterbilt chassis, which is a primary chassis for our vehicles, but different bodies. So we're staying with that Peterbilt chassis, which our fleet maintenance staff is very familiar with. So that's part of our standardization strategy. This body is new, but as we compared it with other models, we feel confident that we can move forward with the same service support that we've had on the existing variety of models we have today.
So the question would be, as we move forward in years, you're saying that this could begin the new standardization of the type of vehicle that we'd use in your team?
That's correct.
Okay.
We standardized on a chassis, and now we want to standardize on this body moving forward.
I like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to approve, Mayor.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. I didn't mean I was seconding. That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 8.
Mayor, I pulled this one, but we'll look and see if there are others too who would like to speak. I think Councilmember Taylor did.
Mayor, are you okay? So we've had the discussion before here. I still feel strongly that we need to do a little bit better in terms of advertising, share my stamp neighbor to neighbor. I'd love to move forward with a motion to approve those dollars. I think that's a great and appropriate use of town money, but not in support of the others. Certainly support the social services and the organizations. Would love to see more that we can do to promote them, and I put forward a number of ideas. Would like to see those implemented, and I think we could really increase our neighbor share my stamp, a lot of that private giving. I think there's some good opportunity there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I wholeheartedly support private support of those in need that's reflected here in terms of the neighbor-to-neighbor piece. But I can't support tax dollars being used that way. I've been through all that. I won't repeat myself. Most people are aware of my position. But as such, I'm ready to make a motion when the time comes to approve the neighbor-to-neighbor funds, but I'll hold back on the rest.
Would it be okay if we did that in 2 separate votes then? Make it easy for you?
That would be very helpful, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, let's allow you to make that motion then, unless somebody else has another statement. Okay.
Mayor, I move to approve the use of neighbor-to-neighbor funds in the amount of $76,400 for the use of covering some of these contracts.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. We're voting just on the $76,000 appropriation at this time. That's approved with a 7-0 vote. Is there a follow-up motion to be made?
Mayor, I move that we approve the funding of item A, B, and C for item 8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on that. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 10.
Mayor, no need to repeat. Same concerns here. I will also say I've got some concerns about the cost per meal served that I've seen the numbers on. Was hoping to meet with some folks and get some more detail. I will continue that hope between now and next year.
Thank you. Is there a motion on agenda item 10?
Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve agenda item number 10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. That takes us to, that completes our consent calendar, I believe. Yes. Excellent. That moves us to the public hearing items. All items will be heard at one public hearing. Are there any requests to speak on any public hearing items?
Mayor, I don't usually ask before the meeting, but I know that I wanted to speak on 24 and 27. Are there any others?
Any requests from the public?
We did also have one on 29, the budget.
Okay, we'll do that we have to actually do that in a separate hearing. So we'll do these first items, and I will open the public hearing on agenda items 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, and 20. Nope, we're just going to go with 26 and close the public hearing on those items.
Mayor?
Entertain a motion.
Mayor,
Yes.
I apologize. I would like to make a comment on 27, if we could pull that one from. Oh, was that already? I'm sorry, thank you.
Mayor, was 28 in or out of?
28 is out because that is a hearing only, so I'm going to do that separately. There's no vote on that actual item. So that takes us, I will absolutely repeat that. I have opened and closed the public hearing on agenda items 21, 22, 23, 25, and 26.
Mayor,
and now we will entertain a motion.
I move to approve items 21, 22, 23, 25, and 26.
Second.
Motion and a second, please vote. That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on agenda item 28. As statutorily required, we are conducting a public hearing on this item, and at this time, it looks like no one wishes to speak on these, so we will close the public hearing on agenda item 28 and continue with the rest of our agenda, and that takes us to agenda item 24.
Mayor, I don't have a problem with the proposal to update to the current MAG version. That's fine. But I'm uncomfortable with the language that allows for the town engineer to update it without coming back to the council. These standards, as far as I understand them, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've spoken with legal counsel on this as well, they carry the force of law, so you have to comply with them. It feels like delegating legislative authority to me. I understand maybe technically there's some case law to support the other notion about it, but I don't think that's a good practice. We've also in the past, we've had council members that have taken an interest in some of those standards. And so to me, that's great evidence of the fact it's a legislative function. That piece should remain with the council. And so as such, regardless of how someone else moves, I have a motion to either amend or move, but without that one piece of language.
Can I get some clarification from staff on that item? I think, Mark, maybe I'll look to you on this item. Can you tell us the sort of the thought process and reasoning behind allowing the town engineer to make those decisions unilaterally without council individual approval? I would imagine it's something to do with timing, but.
Mayor and council, I correct in terms of being responsive and to the changes that are out there, but I would ask David or Tom to kind of, probably David, to since his name is on the town engineer placard, David, if you can help council with that, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. The desire there is to, again, to items of a technical nature that need to be modified to correct deficiencies that exist within the town standards and specifications that we have found through the course of the business that we do within the town is what we're looking for the authorization to happen. An example that we've talked about with the sidewalks that get constructed in the town, we have sidewalks that are attached to the back of a curb and sidewalks that are detached from the back of the curb. What we have found within the town, given the nature of the soils that we have with attached sidewalks, is that Frequently, those attached sidewalks, as soon as they're constructed, will begin to move upward and or downward because of poor soil conditions. Our town standard has a requirement that the structural section of the roadway be engineered and designed so that it can take care of those types of deflections and not have them occur. But that definition ends at the back of the curb, and so when it's time to construct the sidewalk, in this example, when they're attached, we're going back frequently and ripping out attached sidewalks and replacing them again and again, and then we detach them because the tripping hazard that's incurred there. The goal there from a standard perspective, as the engineer, I said I would like that standard for the roadway structural section to be extended from the back of curb to the back of sidewalk when the sidewalk is attached, and to remain as is when the sidewalk is detached. That's an example of the type of standard. Again, something that's technical in nature, not something that would be have any kind of policy really related to it, looking to protect the public safety and also the investment that's being made in the infrastructure within the town.
And just quickly, how are those vetted? Are they coming specifically through MAG technical specifications, or how are those being vetted before they come to you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. A very good question. The MAG process is one that will continue, and that's one that we participate in. Tom Condit sits on that committee, and that's one that is ever under review, and we're always looking to make improvements because Gilbert's not the only community that has issues. As we move forward, adopting standards, we find that there are places where we need to modify them because they're not performing as anticipated. That will continue, and they get vetted by that committee. The one with the attached sidewalk versus detached sidewalk, and where do you design the structural section to, is one that's really kind of particular and peculiar to Gilbert, and that's the one that MAG doesn't really address. So that's one that we would be looking at here. It's not one that the engineer, I would not want to act unilaterally in a situation like that. That's one that I met with our streets people, met with our development services people. I was actually sitting in a meeting with Norm Nichols, and we were talking about a project that Fulton Homes is doing, and I said, what do you do in this situation, Norm? How are you guys going to build it? Oh, we want to make sure we treat the soils underneath the sidewalks because we don't want them heaving like they do in other places. So there are businesses in the community and developers that already have adopted that voluntarily because they don't feel that that's appropriate for the product that they want to deliver to the people that they're trying to sell their products to. And that's the kind of vetting process we'd like to go through.
Councilmember Ray.
I don't know exactly what Councilmember Peterson's amended motion or motion will be, but maybe a solution would be that, because I agree with Councilmember Peterson, I'm fine with the changing with MAG, but I do think that maybe for the next, maybe do a 6-month period where they actually come back to the council with changes, and at the end of 6 months, whatever the time is, we can then decide, okay, this is overburdensome for staff and it's not making sense. But I think that for the next at least few months, that it should come back to council, and then it can be determined, again, whether it's 90 days, 6 months, a year. But I'd like to see them come back for the... So
some continued vetting of that particular idea with council between now and...
Yes, and then we can see, because it's a new process, and our town engineer and his staff are excellent, but I do want to make sure that everyone's on the same page with what's happening. Okay. And so I think that some sort of period of time, and it may go on forever based on how it works.
Thank you. Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. David, this is really for public works construction projects. This is not where we're putting any regulations or new rules on private businesses or private construction of neighborhood. This is something that we actually do for the right-of-way. Is that true or false?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cook, that's a great question. The intent here is for this to be for works that are done within the public right-of-way, where we're trying to protect what's happening within the public right-of-way. On private properties and with those kinds of projects, there's the International Building Code. That's a totally different process. Yep. And again, what we want to look towards is what's being constructed in the rights-of-way.
Excuse me, Mayor, but David, for clarification, that will impact developers as they're doing subdivisions and other projects within Gilbert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the clarification, Mark. It will impact them. The cost to treat the subgrade underneath the sidewalk is in addition to what it would cost under the road. So it does cost more money, but again, it's for the public rights of way that we're looking to make sure that we're maintaining those.
That's exactly what I wanted to find out, is where the line is drawn. So I'm open for now maybe some further discussion as to that language, because I just wanted to clarify if there's really any impact to the private industry, and it sounds like there possibly is. So I think I'm open for some dialogue of possibly maybe relooking at this.
Thank you, Councilmember Cook. Vice Mayor Peterson.
Yeah, so the other concern is that there's really no mechanism if we do, there's no mechanism for public review and notice. I mean, I'm not saying there's a problem with the current update. I'm just saying, why would we get rid of the mechanism that gives opportunities for people to raise those concerns as they may arise? There may be times that there are decisions, technical, whether or not. I mean, look at our building code. Anyone that's read our building code gets very technical, and yet we don't abrogate that to some other unelected person. We keep that with the council. It has a very serious impact on the private industry, and we want to keep in place those mechanisms to allow them to comment and to let us be the legislative body to take all those considerations into account before we set those really legally binding standards. And so anyway, I won't ramble. I apologize for repeating myself a little.
Just for clarification on that, I actually do vote on MAG standards as a representative of Gilbert at MAG Transportation Policy Committee, and then again at the MAG Regional Council level. And so I am doing what I can to represent as an elected body. So there is some public vetting that does go on, although I would be the first to admit that not a lot of people are following MAG meetings. So understood. Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. And I appreciate Councilmember Cook's. That was what I wanted to ask, or at least one of the two questions I wanted to ask. So, because for me, that's an important line. Once it's starting to affect the private sector, I'm okay with this. If it's just internal policy, I think that does make a lot of sense. But once we go out, to me, that needs to be with us. I remember a time at a big manufacturer that I worked with, and this delegation just came back from a trip to China, and they were just going on and on and on about efficiency of their government. And they said when they need to make a road, they just make a road. They just say, everybody move out of the way. And they were saying how great it was. I thought, are you kidding me? Have we ever heard of property rights? I mean, I know China doesn't really care about that, but these were Americans that, pledge allegiance to the republic, right? And anyways, I'm not going to go on and on, but I get the idea of efficiency, but we've got limits. And when it hits the public, I think it's really important for us to keep that with us. The other thing, and David, I don't know why we always apologize. We never caught up today. So just to be real clear, this is not related to international building codes and getting on the 2015 standards or is it? Could you clarify if this includes those building codes and your authorization to approve those without council input on that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, this would only be for the town of Gilbert's standards for construction in the public rights of way.
Right away. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Anderson.
Just very quickly, I'm supportive of what Councilmember Ray was saying. I think that could work. You're going to hear at the next meeting, we've tried an approach similar to that with the sign code that I think you're going to like. And I think that would be something that could work. We could see if this will work.
I know who to go to when we need another subcommittee, so thank you. All right, I think that's all for this particular topic. I will close the public hearing on agenda item 24 and entertain a motion. Sounds like there was a good compromise over here. Is that reflected in the motion?
I'm not totally clear on Councilmember Ray's proposal if he's saying that we would
review it in 6 months.
Keep the language that's proposed by staff, but request that in 6 months that would come back for reviewing. Is that what you're suggesting?
My suggestion is to have the items come to the council decide on it, and then in 6 months we look at this again and decide if we want to remove that requirement to have it come to the council.
Oh, I totally support that. Yes.
So moved, right?
Mayor, I move to approve item 24, amending sections 10-201 and 10-202 of the town code. Got this motion from staff in case you're wondering. For the purpose of removing this sentence in section 10-202 that would allow the town engineer to approve revisions to the Maricopa Association of Governments specifications and details, also with direction to staff to come back in 6 months with analysis on the need to add that language back in.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. I think I know what I'm voting on right now. That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Hopefully it's within the spirit of the dialogue before the motion. Thank you. Yeah, we're moving. We're moving with it. All right, agenda item 27. I open the public hearing on agenda item 27.
Mayor, I'm only aware of Councilmember Taylor who wanted to speak. I also had a brief comment. We're taking turns. I don't know whose turn it is.
Go ahead.
So first of all, I want to recognize town staff in taking some of my comments to heart about, really to me, is a one-time revenue going to an ongoing expenditure in terms of using voter-approved debt to pay for ongoing repair and replacement in our streets. And so there has been some movement on that. Most of that is for future or potential bond issuances. There was a little bit that hit the current, and I appreciate that. I want to see us go further, but I did want to acknowledge that. There are other projects I've already mentioned that I've got concerns with. So I'm not going to try and piece this out and approve some projects and not others. But so I won't be voting in favor of this. I think just overall we're approving as it is, and I think maybe Councilmember Taylor will comment on this. We have almost like a 5-to-1 ratio on what gets authorized to be spent and what actually gets spent, and it's kind of out there to me. I think we've kind of lost sight of what a budget means as far as applying some kind of a restraint when we're so far away. That much contingency just isn't contingency in my mind. It's something else. So I'll stop my comments there, and we'll hear from others.
Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. So in the packet, it says that this was put together at council direction, and I'll be clear, most of this stuff is pretty good. But there's some things that we've been asking for to talk about. Councilmember Cook and I in particular have asked to talk about the funding of the park, right? That's a big thing. I'm still jealous of his assignment as the Parks and Rec liaison. It's a fun thing, but it's a big, big deal. In here, it assumes that we're going to have bonds, right? But we've never really had a discussion of that. And so this is not council direction. That isn't really, I don't think it's appropriate to put that implication in there. And the other one that we still need to have more talk about is like the public safety, whether that's going to be bond. I'd like to see more discussion about that, see if there's a way we can pay instead of debt on equity, even with the parks and things like that. So I'd hate for this to go forward with the signal that this was council direction in all cases. Certainly supportive of a lot of this, and a lot of this is good. The last thing I'll mention, Mayor, that concerns me is what we talked about at the last budget meeting is this does reflect a movement to more debt spending versus equity spending in terms of how we operate our town. So I've already said my piece on that, but that's certainly not reflective of my approach of how I'd like to finance some of these projects. So anyway, so I won't be supporting this tonight, but thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Cook.
It's actually a question for Kelly. I know we've been doing a lot of data mining and so forth. Is there a graph that shows, again, I don't know, CIP adopted versus CIP actual spend type of graphs? I don't know if there is or not, but it might be a new one that we can work on together. But
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, we have been working on some graphs. This is one that you and I had looked at earlier. This is probably the one that shows best on the CIP side.
Yeah.
So on here, the full color are the actual spends for the year, and then the shaded color are the budgeted spends for that year. So we can see we budgeted, and then actual, budgeted, and then actual for those years. The blue on the bottom shows the personnel, and then contractual is the orange. So that's the core ongoing expenditures, and you can see that those budget to actual are pretty much the same each year. The green is the CIP spend, and then the grayed out is the contingency. So you can see that the difference in most of the budget to actual spending year over year is because of the CIP, and that will be several reasons. One of them, that we budget the full amount of the project up front, so that if we start 10 projects, we have the full funding finished those 10 projects. We don't get only through that first year, go to budget the second year and find out we can only continue with 5 of the 10. And so that causes carryover on those larger projects that are multi-year. And as you know, we've been working with our CIP group because of the great needs in our community about expanding that staff capacity to be able to have the capacity to really work and complete these projects moving forward.
And I know we've been trying to put together, some metrics as relates to, population growth over a period of time. And, I'm going to probably ask for some more metrics as it relates to, how much, I know Mayor Lewis, 5 years ago put together a initiative with the economic development team that basically said that we would try to reach $1 billion of private capital here in the town of Gilbert. And I know that, talking with Dan just the other day, that we've reached that number. And another metric would be also the metric of, how many jobs, through, trying to get companies come in. Again, those are numbers that to me support a lot of the CIP projects and so forth. But we'll work on some more of that. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about, our growth over the last numbers of fiscal years here.
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, is there something specific on this? I know is one that.
Well, again, I think the growth, as I'm trying to show, is that, as it relates to capital spend versus our growth. And again, this is just population at this point. So if is the green the actual capital spend that we see here? So if we go back to the time when Mayor Daniels approved of her first budget back in 2010. Well, I'm just trying to remember, and so forth. But it looks like it's fairly flat if I look from year to year to year as relates to capital spend. Would that be a correct assessment there? If I look at fiscal year 2010 through 2016, I'm looking at the green. Is that what I'm thinking that is? The green is the capital?
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, yes, that's correct. The green is the capital. There is some fluctuation from year to year, but much less so than in the 2009 time period, 2009, when we were in high growth before the recession.
Right. So we're by no means spending like we used to. But for the last, since Mayor Daniels has been on the team, it's been pretty flat. Okay, I just wanted to share that. Well, again, I'm just trying to remember, when you came on board as it relates to your first fiscal year that you may have approved. So, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that.
Member Ray.
Kelly, explain to us, if you would, briefly, what CIP, what we're approving here. And I guess my point is, we are not approving these budgets for the next 10 years. These are ideas of over the next 10 years, here are some of the things that the town wants to do. What we have planned in the next year as part of the CIP is part of the budget we're going to vote on tonight. But if this is approved, by no means is this council approving these budgets for the next 10 years on CIP. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Ray, that is correct. We are only approving for actual fiscal reasons the first year of the CIP. The others are for planning purposes, and they help us let us know what decisions need to be made in those future years. To Councilmember Taylor's point, whether we want to go the direction of bonds, whether we want to change which projects we want to do less projects, whether we want to find other funding sources. But this is that opportunity to let us know that there is something coming up, and then we also use it for the system development fee studies, because we need a longer vision and view in order to create those studies.
So this is a list that staff has come up with consultation from council, saying here are all the projects we think should be on the radar for the next 10 years. They're then prioritized in each year based on when people think they should be done. That's correct.
Yes.
But going backwards, the CIPs have been approved many times, yet have never been completed nor never started, right? Because it's a placeholder where they get pushed. My point is, we're not, for the general public, we're not approving this for the next 10 years of here's all of our expenditures. And I suspect we will have many more questions and comments and discussions about bonds, whether it's for parks, whether it's for other things. So by no means is this council saying tonight we think we should go to a bond, or we're approving going out for a bond. Nothing of that nature. This is just, here are opportunities that the staff thinks will be important with the insight from council, and here are some ways that we can pay for it. Is that a fair generalization?
Mayor, Councilmember Ray, yes, that's correct. Any bonds that are issued would have to be approved by this council. Adopting the CIP does not approve bonds.
Thank you. Any other statements about CIP? All right, I will close the public hearing on agenda item 27 and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item 27.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. All right. We have completed the public hearing portion, and now we'll recess the regular meeting and convene in special meeting. And I will now open the public hearing on agenda item 29. This is, you can tell we just shifted in our chairs. It's now a special meeting about the budget. Kelly, if you could give us a presentation, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I know we've talked about the budget several times, so I'll keep this very brief. Gilbert is growing. With that growth, the biggest question that I'm getting is, why is this budget bigger? And as you can see from this graph, in comparison to what we adopted last year to comparison to what is proposed before you tonight, the biggest difference is that green category. These colors are similar to the graph we just looked at. So our personnel, our contractual are staying very level. It's mostly in the capital spending that you'll see the big difference because of the large projects that we have coming forward and the needs of our community. When we look at the overall spending historically, this is all of the historic spending actuals. You can see again that the core, our personnel and our operating, are staying very level over time. This is inflation adjusted and per capita. If it were perfect, then you would see that it would be a perfectly straight horizontal line. Budget's not exactly that way. There are dips and falls naturally over the years, but you can see that this is actually quite close to a horizontal line and stays very steady over that time period. The big variability is in our capital spending on years when we do more or less projects. And then the graph that we just looked at, this shows the comparison of the budget to the actuals, and the biggest difference on budget to actual is on that capital spending side, not on our core operations side. And our communication department has put together a very fun budget video for us. It's only a couple of minutes long, and then we'll see what questions council has.
I'm Kelly Faust, Director of the Office of Management and Budget in Gilbert, Arizona. This is our new budget plan. Gilbert is the largest town in America and rapidly growing, so we need to keep up with the needs of our citizens when it comes to maintaining our infrastructure, keeping our public safe, and overseeing projects. Budget analysts like Justine Bruno work hard to make sure we're maintaining low taxes and low cost of service. As you can see, a larger portion of this year's budget is dedicated to these long-term projects. This year's budget makes an investment in those areas vital for our residents that will last for years to come. In public safety, that means 16 new Gilbert Police employees, 7 new fire and rescue employees.
And on the corner of Higley and Ocotillo, a new fire station.
Gilbert is known as a family-friendly community, and our parks are a valuable resource for our residents. The first phase of this 272-acre regional park project will bring
designs for new playgrounds, tennis courts, and more.
And in our vibrant heritage district,
600 new parking spaces.
Gilbert is growing, and we're invested in securing our future, maintaining a high-quality level of service for our residents, and keeping Gilbert a premier place to live, work, and play.
Kelly, you're destined to be a star. Thank you for your contribution to that. And for thanks for the overview. I think the visual nature of that will help our residents too to understand the efforts that we're making here. Obviously, all contingent upon a vote tonight. So that's an important part. Terrific. Yeah. We have one request to speak from the public. I think we'll go to that request to speak now and then continue forward with the rest of the council comment.
Mayor, they didn't check a box, but Joe and Colette Picoz, am I saying your name right? So if you would like to speak, go ahead and come on forward. If you want to speak separately, you can each have 3 minutes. We've got time for that if you'd like, or one of you can. Whoever speaks, please state your name for the record and whether or not you are a Gilbert resident, and you'll look to the light for your cues. Thank you.
Stupid thing. I'm Colette Picos, and you said the name correctly. I live at 3415 East Amber Lane. That's off of Elliott and Higley. One of the main things I am against the budget. I think it's a ridiculous amount. I think you're going to out-tax people like my husband and I, as well as the young people coming in won't be able to afford a home in Gilbert because the taxes. We won't be able to enjoy the nice community that we have because of the taxes. But the main thing I wanted to tell you is I'm also a volunteer for Americans for Prosperity. And they put out the reports about a month ago. And I'm sure most of you have seen it already on LD12 because I have posted it on the website. It isn't just for Gilbert, it's for all the different towns. And I'm going to let you know where you stood. Mr. Cook, on budget, you're -5. Property tax, you're -2. Sales tax, you're 0. Lien bonus, 0. Total score, -7. You're a hero for big government. Congratulations for thinking of the taxpayers of Gilbert.
And I'll be glad to comment after that.
Bridget Peterson, budget, -5. Property tax, -2. Sales tax, 0. Lien bonus, 0. Total score, -7. Another hero for the big government. And you were worried a couple years ago when Bridget said this to you guys. You were all worried about that. You were proud of them. Guess what? You're proud of them now. Jen Daniels, you're -7, total -7. Again, you were budget -5, property tax -2, sales tax 0, lien bonus 0, and -7 as a total. Again, you're a hero of the big government. Victor Peterson, you are a 5 on budget. You are a 2 on property tax. You are a 0 on sales tax. Lien bonus, you are 0. Total score, 7, no minus. You're a hero of taxpayer. Thank you for thinking about us. And Mr. Jordan, you're -7, and which means you're a hero. And Mr. Taylor, you're a 7, which means you're a hero of the taxpayers. And I thank you for doing that, for thinking of us.
Thank you, Ms. Picos.
And I did appreciate the laughing.
Councilmember Cook?
Kelly, could you please come up?
No, I think that was all, unless Joe wanted to speak.
Can we show one of my favorite slides that you and I have worked on? So I just want to make it very clear here to the public, and when I hear comments like this, you know, it's ridiculous, extremely ridiculous. And I'm going to be really frank about this because we're going to talk about facts. Because when you run any business, private or government, at the end of the day, it's going to be about what we spend, what the expenses that we brought in, and what the revenue that's that we, you know, what expenses that we bring out, and what the revenues we brought in. So here's a great graph that I want to share with the public. Because what you're doing is that you're measuring us on the adopted budget. Now, if I were to share with the public and say, if we adopt a certain budget, but we spent below that adopted budget, you would think that there would be folks here that would be clapping because we did not spend what we adopted. This chart here shows over the last number of fiscal years since 2010, the adopted budgets that this council and prior councils have approved. So what you'll see there in blue are those adopted budgets that this council has done in the past. But if you look at the green chart, the green bar, those are the actual dollars that were spent by this local government. And as you can see there, that in, you know, when we're looking at fiscal year 2017, we adopted a budget of $850 million, but we're projecting to spend about 360-ish. That's less than half of the adopted budget that we have.
Excuse me, we do not allow yelling from the audience. Thank you.
And as you can see there, if you really were to look at all of those fiscal years of all the expenses, and you can see how flat that is. And you look at, again, we're only looking at population. The population starting from 2010 through 2017, our population growth was at 15% growth between 2010 to 2015. But if you look at the expenses that we did, you see some of them go up a little high, some go a little low. In fact, the amount of money that we spent this last year versus the year before was less. So if you're really going to grade us and grade this wonderful council and the staff, you need to grade us on the expenses. Because at the end of the day, it's about what we spend the taxpayer dollars for. This council has not raised any taxes as it relates to sales tax. In fact, just recently, this council did lower our bed tax. And a couple of years ago, we did remove 4 categories of taxes. So this council has done fabulous as it relates to protecting and making sure that the tax dollars are low. And I just wanted to make sure that the public sees this chart because it's really about measuring us and grading us on what we spend. It's not what these adopted budgets are. These adopted budgets have what I consider dollar value or meat that you grade us on. These are just adopted. It's what we spend is what really counts, and that's what we really should be graded for. So if you look at that, again, we could have spent everything that's in blue, but we didn't, because this team here is fiscally responsible. We're fiscally responsible as it relates to the taxpayer dollars. And if you go to any business, they would love to see this type of graph, that the expenses that we spent as relates to the growth in this community, it's fairly flat, that we provide the highest level of service at the lowest cost. And there are many, many charts that we have that shows the number of employees versus the number of residents per thousand. I mean, just recently, we got our second AAA bond rating. And if you have to understand, it's a financial institution that monitors and manages all of the I should say manage, but monitors all of the municipalities in the country. There's 3 of them, Fitch, Moody, and Standard & Poor's. We have 2 AAA bond ratings, which means there's millions and millions of dollars of tax savings that goes back to the taxpayer because of what this team has done. And again, it's a team effort. So I'm just telling you, your grading, that organization that grades us is flawed. It's flawed. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm going to come out clearly and say this. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not saying I'm getting angry, but this is from year to year. I put this chart together just for you. I knew you were coming. And I'm just showing to the public how wonderful this organization is running.
Thank you, Councilmember Cook, for those comments. I've often related the Americans for Prosperity test to that game show, that old game show, Name That Tune. How many people actually got the song on 1 or 2 notes? Never. No one ever guessed the song on 1 or 2 notes. You usually need many more to be able to know what the song is. And so, unfortunately, I think that's been referenced this evening. It doesn't take in or factor growth in a community. It does not factor in actual projects that need and must be done. And so, while we as a council would never have brought this up, since we are, I think, in this case, responding to criticism or an accusation, which is part of our purview as a council. So with that, we will continue to discuss the actual budget in front of us. And I'm going to look for, let's see, Councilmember Ray, are you ready to comment, or is anyone else ready to comment on the budget for this year? Terrific. Vice Mayor Peterson. We have a bread graph.
Well, they're starting to.
I'll be very brief because we generally have a very similar conversation every time the budget rolls around, and I don't have any earth-shattering new insights since the preliminary budget. As usual, the budget really hasn't changed significantly from preliminary to final, and so I just show this graph. Now, I understand staff has some similar graphs. None of them are the same for two, well, I think there's 2 major reasons. There's one graph that's very close to this, but the scaling is totally different because they're showing all this expenditure stacked on each other. And the other thing that's going on is this is simply the ongoing costs. So, and you know, when I came up with this, and first of all these numbers come from staff. Yeah, I put them on a graph, but the underlying simple math of a certain ongoing expenditure divided by a certain population, both of those numbers that drive this graph, they all come from staff. I don't provide those. So I don't think there's any disagreement on these are the facts. And when I decided ongoing, I was trying to be fair because realizing that some years have more one-time expenditures than other years, and that may not be a fair reflection of our actual trajectory. But this is ongoing. And this kind of spending is very hard to change. It's painful to an organization to change. And I think the trajectory is off. I do. And you'll see that gray line, that's the budgeted versus the line for inflation. We have had years in the past where we've mirrored inflation, not very long, but we have had years like that. And so I think in the long term, that's probably where we need to be. There's a lot of people that agree with that concept that government shouldn't grow any faster than 2 things. Their population, which this includes, and inflation. And so that's my concern. I will also just mention, I understand Councilmember Cook's comments about what we actually spend. But I will just say that as a council, what we do is authorize. We authorize expenditures. We don't do the actual spending. So as far as looking good and taking credit, staff spends the money, we authorize the money. So for outside onlookers to judge us on what we authorize, I think it's fair. Now, there's other things there's different ways to do it. But I think it's fair to judge us on what we authorize, because at the end of the day, staff could do that. And we couldn't be upset with anyone, because that's what we approved. So anyway, I won't ramble, Mayor. We've been around the block on this one a few times. I will just point out, we also still do not know how we're going to pay for all of the streets repair and replacement. And so if you include that too, there's no way to really balance the budget, at least from an ongoing revenues covering all the ongoing expenditures, unless you want to keep doing that through more property taxes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Ray.
A couple of comments. One, in reference to Councilman Peterson's last comment about authorizing. The council does authorize, and that's what I like about contingency. Contingency gives the council a whole lot more oversight on spending. And what I mean by that is if we were to, when we approve a budget, it's a maximum amount that the town can spend. If we didn't do a contingency, and we just put it in individual departments, like some organizations, some private companies, some governments may do, there could be fluff in there, right? And they could spend on anything they want, hurry and blow the budget by the end of the year. What's great, and we would never hear back. If police wanted to go buy things that was in their budget, the thing I love about contingency is, one, everything over $50,000 still comes to the town council. So even if we authorize this budget tonight, it's not as though they meaning staff, has the ability to go spend this entire budget. They can't spend contingency unless it's over $50,000 has to get our approval. So it's not as though we're writing them a blank check and they can go spend it however they want. Also, anything under $50,000, we get in our quarterly report from staff, every single thing that is contingency spent. So again, it's not as though we're writing a blank check and at the end of the year they come back and say, this is how much we use, thank you. There is any council member who's willing to put forth the time, and I suspect everyone on this council has all of that information and at any time can talk about it publicly or privately. Like Kelly said, the contingency is also very high because we have so much carry forward. So when we start the plant expansion, or we started it, or we're going to start it at the wastewater, and it's going to cost $70 million, and we budget that $70 million, 20 of it is coming out of cash. Are we going to spend all 20 of it this year? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to have all 70 in the budget so that it doesn't get a half-done project and then it sits there. So we do authorize it, and we continue to authorize it as necessary. The second point I wanted to comment on Councilmember Peterson's graph. As I understand it, you're taking, Councilmember Peterson, you're taking the budget and dividing it by the residents. Is that correct? So the ongoing, which I think is totally false. And here's why. The taxes from last year that were approved, the difference in sales tax was zero. Residents of Gilbert are paying no more this year than they paid last year for sales tax, unless you went out and spent a bunch more money, you bought a car, you did something like that. My family, and like probably every family here, has budgets, and you're pretty similar year to year. I am not paying any more to the town of Gilbert on sales tax this year than I did last year or the year before. So to say that the average cost per resident goes up is absolutely false. The only thing that changed in the last 2 years, and will change again this year, assuming on the 29th we approve the property tax levy, if you owned a home or own a home that is worth $250,000, after assuming there was appreciation last year of 4.8%, your taxes on your secondary property tax, voter approved, went up $13 for the year. If there was no appreciation in your home, which we all assume there's appreciation, especially in Gilbert, your change was $1 for the entire year, $1.05. Going forward this year, assuming we adopt the levy on the 29th, if there's another 4% appreciation, next year you will pay $2 more in property taxes. If there's no appreciation in Gilbert, you will save $8.20 on the new levy. So it's not fair to say that because approved budget goes up, that the cost per resident goes up. So that means the revenue's going up. And fortunately, as a town, whether council takes credit, whether staff takes credit, whether residents takes credit, many more people are coming to Gilbert and spending dollars here, and the tax revenue from sales tax is increasing. It's not a per cost as though each Gilbert resident now has to pay $5 or $10 or $20 more this year based on improved or additional spending. Now, I am not with these comments saying let's keep spending more and more money because there's no property tax, sales tax change. But I am saying it's not fair to say that the cost to each Gilbert resident goes up each year. What it means is that there's additional tax revenue, even though the tax levels have stayed the same, generally speaking, other than the bed tax that dropped. So, is the budget that's on the table tonight higher than last year? Absolutely. Is it higher than the year before? Absolutely. Are any taxes changing? Absolutely not. Nothing is changing tonight from a tax standpoint as though we're raising taxes, which will then cost Gilbert residents more. So I appreciate staff and their efforts. The fact that we are doing a wastewater expansion of $20 million and paying cash for it, and Mesa is bonding their portion of it, that's a huge difference in the way that money is spent. Can we do better with our budgets? Absolutely. And I appreciate staff and their efforts in continually trying to improve it. So is this a perfect budget? No. Are there things that each one of us disagree with? Yeah, some of us disagree with more than others. But I do appreciate staff's efforts on this. And I appreciate the residents who, through all their efforts, help us keep taxes exactly the same while we're able to build additional streets. We're able to build a parking garage of almost $20 million out of cash as well. So thank you to staff for your efforts on this, and the residents should be proud of the ability to be able to build these new things, this new infrastructure, and have zero cost difference to them.
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, that's kind of hard to follow. Councilmember Ray did an excellent job hitting all of the points that I think needed to be hit this evening. I think that some of the charts that we see are confusing, sometimes one-sided, the way that you want to portray something to be. I appreciate the work that staff puts into this budget and the time that they spend with us. The questions that they answer, the calls that they take, the emails that they send, and the fact that Councilmember Ray, again, really laid it out how nothing is going to change unless the assessment on your house goes up, and depending on our vote on the 29th. And I appreciate that. And I don't think I have any other comments at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson?
At the risk of being put on a list, I'll make a few comments next year, I guess. There's one thing that I've heard over the years, well, a couple of things that were always a priority. One was being fiscally responsible and doing the right thing. But the one thing that I think I heard more than being fiscally responsible was transparency. And that's what I appreciate about this budget and previous budgets that have been done by this council. You've been totally transparent. In years past, I prepared a lot of budgets in this town, but in years past, we separated things out so it wasn't quite as transparent. And the public didn't really know how to differentiate between the different numbers that were in the budget or in the CIP. And I totally appreciate what we're doing now is presenting everything, being totally transparent to the public and how we spend our money. And as I said, I spent 25 years building budgets in this town, and I can tell you for a fact that those people that are sitting in the back of the room right back there don't let you get away with anything, with trying to spend money without being responsible in doing the right thing for the public, and being sure that you do that in a fiscally responsible manner. So I appreciate all the work that's been done in the budget, and I look forward to seeing it implemented and being able to complete the projects that I think are very important for the continued growth of the town.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. So let me make a couple of points here. You know, its core budget is an expression of priorities, right? So this, and Kelly did confirm that this would be the largest budget authorized in the history of Gilbert. And I don't disagree with some of the points. I do want to address some of those things, but I do want to echo a theme that I think we need to take a little more seriously, because it's going to bite us if we don't. And are we going to spend more in debt or in cash, right? We have these things we keep kicking down the road, like parks. Councilmember Cook and I really wanted to see that in the financial retreat. We didn't get it. We got a lot of discussions of tax increases and fee increases and that kind of stuff. We can only kick that can down the road so far. Public safety facility is something as well. I don't think the public has an appetite to bond that, but I think we all know that's a need in our community and we need to address it. So, Mayor, you and I have had some other conversations about a list of things that really, from a priority standpoint, they're big things that I think we need to work on. We didn't get it done, and we've been asking for it. And this budget, I don't believe, has as good a thinking as we could have had. There's a lot of missed opportunities in there. So that's one thing. I'm not going to go too much further on that. You know, it's no secret that I pick out some head count here that I have frustration with, because it's more of a symbol of we have more head count than we need. I certainly support the public safety. I want to be very clear on that. I know that we're pulling lots of overtime on police, and certainly with the fire station build and the staffing there, that's important. Fully support that. But I don't understand why we're paying, and I just need some explanation on why do we need a tourist analyst when we don't have a tourism strategy, and paying $114,000 in total comp on that. Kelly, I don't know if you want to answer that, or it's Patrick or whoever wants to answer that one, but.
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, would you like a breakdown of the salary and benefits and loaded costs of the position, or a discussion about the position itself and the role it would serve for the organization?
More of the latter, because as a council, we have, the item for tourism is October 19th, right? So why are we budgeting? I know we can say, well, we're not going to fill it till later, but an analyst position in the market is about a $30,000 to $40,000 base salary, and you put a 30% premium for overhead on that. That's what an analyst does in the private sector. Why is it $114,000 in government? I have no idea, but maybe you can enlighten me on that one.
Sure, Mayor, Councilmember Taylor. In regards to our titles, I don't know that they align with various categories that the private sector uses as they classify positions. I think probably if you looked at, it would depend on the individual company or industry sector as well, but it's probably not an equivalent type of role in regards to the work that would be done by an analyst, so to speak, in this role versus maybe an analyst in a private company. But I will ask our Economic Development Director, Dan Henderson, to come up and talk about this position and the role it would serve and the return to this community that we would receive.
And just for clarification, we do have a tourism strategy. That's why we had the limited term contracted individual last year being part of the economic development team. So there actually is a strategy. We're just now getting into the implementation phase of the strategy. So Dan, I was killing time for you. How'd I do? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Taylor, appreciate the question about tourism and the analyst. The role of this position is primarily a business development function, where this individual will come on board and work with the hotels as well as the conference centers and the various meeting spaces in town to actively pursue conferences and trade shows that can fit those facilities and develop room blocks that can ultimately bring a return on investment into the community. I can go on into additional details as to what the roles of this individual will take on and the expectations of the position. If you have any additional questions, I'm more than happy to address them.
Well, I think that's good for now. But let's get to also another point I think is important is why do we want to use taxpayer money to preference one industry over another? Is that fair to have a dedicated person promoting a certain sector of our industry versus another sector?
Mayor and Council, I might approach this question, and certainly I can look to others to field this. Specifically, Councilmember Taylor, in most of Gilbert, we have individuals that oversee lines of service, specific lines of service. Mine, for example, serving as the Economic Development Director for Gilbert, is to oversee the lines of service that support economic development. Tourism was one of those initiatives that was brought in-house and ultimately placed within the town, and it currently is in the Economic Development Office. And what we endeavored to do with this position and this individual would be to coordinate that line of service regarding tourism. Not so much favor one industry over the other. We've got a number of different administrator positions at a high level. This could be an administrator position serving in an analytical role to attract and retain tourism-related activities that would then fundamentally have a return on investment. Similarly, we have individuals that serve in administrator positions that focus on business attraction, that key in on industries that we think are beneficial to the town. We also have an individual that oversees a line of service for retention and expansion that would work with those businesses that are currently in town to keep them here and to help retain them and help them to expand.
I appreciate that. I think that's great. So, and just one last thing on this topic, because I agree with the town manager, the titling is completely off on this. There's another analyst role, and we've had an analyst in the past, social media analyst from last year highlighted, right? Do we need $76,000 for someone to be on social media? No, of course not. But this is really manager, director level type of a compensation package. So is there an anticipation that this person would have reports or build out a tourism or a conference type apparatus that we see in some other cities around here?
That's an excellent question. Councilmember Taylor, the expectation of this position is that they would use the existing assets and amenities that are in town, certainly seek to grow additional assets and amenities in town that would ultimately serve to attract conferences, trade shows that fit those assets and amenities in town, make those connections of individuals that might come in for a 2, 3, 4, 5-day stay through that conference, and those connections would ultimately have individuals staying in Gilbert hotels, spending money, going to restaurants, visiting other amenities within town. I'm not certain if that exactly answers your question. The organizational role that this person would have is as an analyst. It would be considered a 221, which is a certain pay grade, and there is an organizational philosophy that supports that specific pay grade.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That's enough on that topic.
Can I just want to chat with Councilmember Taylor on it. So as you know, we try to lower that bed tax. And some of that rationale, as much as I wanted it to also be a competitive, is that we know that we're going to online a whole bunch more rooms here in Gilbert. And as we know, and Dan, you can verify, we're obligated by the state statute, if we take advantage of the Model City tax code, where tourism is one of those buckets that we say yes to, we're obligated by state statute, I believe 2/3 of whatever we bring in from the bed tax has to go to tourism. It has to. I mean, we can't put it back in a general fund and use it for something else. And, in Dan's strategic plan, we're going to have to use that money and identify and report it back to the state. I know some of us would love just to get rid of the bed tax, so we wouldn't have to, I'll say, expand or grow government in that area. But, in a sense, we're kind of locked into that state statute. So, from my understanding, this position is really going to help use and direct those individuals that are business folks that are coming into the region and push them to spend those dollars in our local businesses is what I understand primary where this individual is going to be focused on. And it's not the tourism that you think about, think about going to the Grand Canyon or going up to Scott. It's really focused on taking those individuals that come into the hotels, push them into our small businesses like our entertainment from restaurants and movies, Top Golf, whatever that is to really drive that. And then the second type of hotel occupant is really going to be related to youth sports, the tournaments that we come in the Gilbert. Again, focus on getting those individuals to spend those first dollars in eating, here in Gilbert. So we got to spend those dollars for tourism. Dan's team, I think, is trying to be strategic about those dollars and having this individual figure a way to have those folks that do come into those hotels, spend those extra dollars back in Gilbert. And that's the way I think it has to be unless we figure out another way to not, use those bed tax dollars. And I know some of us would like to get rid of it, but again, that's what I see happening here, is that we have to identify those tourism bed tax dollars for tourism, and Dan's trying to do his best in identifying how to use that.
Thank you, Councilmember Cook. Councilmember Taylor, I think the floor is still hurt his, so we will let you finish up whatever remaining comments. Absolutely.
Mayor, thank you. And I do want to compliment Councilmember Cook for the work he did on the bed tax, because that's very important. We might disagree on some of the application of it. I will mention, not to get into too much of a history lesson here, but the Model City Tax Code was something that came out of Washington, D.C. And do you know the first city in America to actually implement it? It was a 1960s application. It was Detroit. Detroit whole hog swallowed the Model City Tax Code. And I'm not saying that's what caused Detroit. Obviously, there was a lot of other things. But for us to totally be married to that Model City Tax Code, I think we should take the good parts of it and leave the bad parts of it. But the term is a little bit misleading on that. And it's a really old thing that I hope we can move off of at some point. Mayor, I do have a couple of other things. We talked about taxes, right? The assumption in the current budget that we're looking for is, if I understand it correctly, assuming the same thing, the tax increase that we're considering on the 29th. Although that was modified, that was a compromise, it's still an increase. And I do want to touch on, because these are all kind of interlaced here with contingency and the levy and so forth. One thing that Kelly shared with me was something that we talked about, I think it was 2 years ago. And the point I made this year and a couple of years ago was that we're authorizing money that we're not going to spend. And why is that important? Well, it's really important when it's applied to the levy, because that does hit your pocketbook. And maybe it's just $2, as Councilmember Ray rightly pointed out. There's, those are possible numbers, and it could be a little higher, but it does actually hit the pocketbook. So one of the things that we talked about, Mayor, you might remember you and I had an exchange on this, the Lindsay and 202 exchange. I said, hey, all we needed really to not have to raise taxes that particular year is to bring that down maybe 1.2, 1.3 million. We had about 6 to 7 million in the CIP for that interchange. And I said, let's just shave it, because we're not going to spend all that anyways. And it wasn't done. What was authorized was 7 million, and I asked Kelly to tell me, what do we actually spend? Because the authorized amount, that's the chart that Councilmember Cook's been talking about. It's important. We spent about $330,000. And so to me, where it does hit the pocketbooks and where we do have these big variances matter. There's other times when it probably doesn't matter, as Councilmember Ray rightly pointed out. But that's where I think we're not being as discriminating. And we have opportunity, again, on the 29th to probably talk about that, because we could have easily just shaved, 6 million off of that. It's still got everything done that we were able to reasonably do, and then not have to raise any levy on that. So anyways, I wanted to make that, because that does have some tax implications, and when we have these huge contingency buffers, I think, I agree with the point, one of the points Councilmember Ray talked about in terms of contingency planning does give us more control when it comes back. I do think that there's a real benefit to that. I just think it's too big. That buffer's way too big. I think we can almost cut it in half and still reasonably get everything we have the manpower to even do with that contingency control that I think is a nice way to go. And then, well, we talk about Gilbert growing. This is the last point, Mayor. I appreciate the time on this, but it would sure be great to see economies of scale come out of this. I mean, when your denominator grows, when your population is growing, shouldn't you be able to spread your costs over more people? And shouldn't certain rates and levies and things come down? We have seen those in some cases. We've been able to do that. I don't think the budget expresses that as much as we reasonably could. So that's why I'm not supportive as it is right now, because I think it's putting us in more of a debt position than I would be comfortable with. I think we have opportunities to pay for some things in cash. But when we start obligating our budget on unnecessary headcount, like we've done over the last couple of years, and continue to do, it just binds our hands for projects that we could that cash that we could obligate in the future. So I appreciate the generous time, Mayor, and so for those reasons, unless we see a significant reduction in this, I'm not going to be in favor of this tonight.
Thank you. I saw Councilmember Anderson's hand again. Do you still?
No, I just wanted to bring up again on this whole idea of the tourism strategy that I brought a tourism strategy to the council about 4 years ago. And in most communities, tourism is something that's done through the Chamber of Commerce, but our Chamber of Commerce is not going to do that. And we have a tremendous opportunity in this community to develop a tourism industry, which we're going to need to do as we get more mature. And I just think it's time that we put things in place to be able to do that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Peterson.
Mayor, I'll be super brief. Just want to comment on the contingency conversation. Most of the delta between what was authorized and spent is not accountable by what has been labeled and set aside as contingency. I'll just point that out. You can't. The actual authorized contingency amount is much lower number. So when we talk about what's going to come back to the council for further authorization because it's contingency, we're really not talking about most of that. It's actually other money that is authorized to be spent without ever coming back to the council again. So I'll point that out. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think if you look at the numbers, you'll see that that's true. That doesn't explain most of it. The other thing I'll just say, when we talk about cost per residence, I'm using the word expense and cost interchangeably. Most conversations you can do that. Maybe some accountants out there would be mad at me. I don't know. But if you go back to my chart, and I wish we can show it one more time because I'm going to make this final point, because we're sort of missing the point of what I'm saying with this. If you can just put that up one last time. If it'll come up. Okay, the word expense in up there instead of cost, you're welcome to do that. But the bottom line is you see the peak of the graph in the middle. At that point in the game, I'm sure that's finally when the council here was saying, wait a minute, our expenditure trend is not sustainable. And that's when the tax increase was proposed. And so, yeah, where we are right now, it feels nice. It feels good. We're in an up market. We're in a good economy. And so, yeah, nobody's got a tax, ostensible tax increase. But my point is, what happens when the market turns? We're going to be in the same position the former council was. And so, at least that's my concern. So, and then we're talking about actual ongoing expenditures, again, that are painful to change. I will stop talking now. I'm just saying taxes later are going to be what we're talking about. You're right, we haven't raised any rates other than the property tax slightly. We'll get back to that.
I made a bet with myself that this meeting would be over at 9 p.m. and I think I just lost a bet with myself. So there was no money involved. It was just a bet with myself. I just will make my comments brief. First of all, I really love this council. I love the continual desire by all 7 of us to challenge the status quo. I love the fact that we spend exorbitant amounts of time, both independently and then hand in hand with staff, in order to really understand and come to a solid understanding of what this budget is and what it offers our residents. I was particularly grateful this evening, although while I appreciated everyone's comments, Councilmember Ray's comment about actual payment from our residents resonated with me, that when we have not raised taxes, and this council has no intention of raising taxes, and that's what you've seen here, it's a commitment at 1.5%. We are a consumption-based economy in Gilbert, which means that your sales tax and then a portion of state shared, both income and sales tax, is what makes up the revenues of our budget, particularly as it relates to our general fund. The increases that you're seeing here are not general fund major increases. We've already referenced that. Those are capital improvement project expenditures. We have several big projects in the works for this next fiscal year. Some of them are wrapping up, some of them are just starting. But this is all in an effort to continue to both stay ahead of growth in our community and meet the needs of our residents currently. Because we are a consumption-based community, we have no primary property tax in Gilbert. We do not raise and lower a primary property tax in order to fit pet projects. Unfortunately, that's not always accounted for in surveys and in other types of analysis that goes on outside of Gilbert. But here in Gilbert, we are proud to say that we are still the lowest cost of living for all of our, the lowest cost of services for all of the region. That's saying something, that we're able to grow, that we have the high quality community that we do have and still maintain a 1.5% sales tax rate, a secondary property tax levy that has fallen in the last 4 years, gone from $1.15 where it was since 2002 to what it was at least this last year. We won't vote on that till the 29th, but for next year, but it is not proposed to grow. So we were at $1.06, a little bit less, but $1.06 is what we'll round to. We should be jumping up and down excited about this. Yes, there is some questions about contingency and carry forward and things like that. But again, what I love about this council is that we have 15 financial policies in place in this community that guide and direct our decisions. Those were wise. Those are wise financial policies. Our staff who helped us develop those, and then this council who had substantial input on that, deserve some credit when it comes to making consistent, wise decisions within our organization. Every single dollar in our budget is accounted for. You do not find that in most municipalities. I certainly won't call anyone out, but if you compare our budget to any other municipal budget, there is nothing hidden. There is nothing behind the scenes. We show you every transfer, we show you every expenditure, and we are accountable for those dollars, and we make sure that if our residents have a question about a dollar that's been spent in the town of Gilbert, that we access that information and provide that. And that's been a consistent message that we have. So without belaboring this any further, I am looking for a motion. I will close the public hearing on agenda item 29 and entertain that motion.
I move that we approve agenda item 29.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Again, thank you, council. Thank you, staff. Kelly, I hope you have a vacation planned in the next 6 weeks or so, because I know that this is a heavy lift every year, and for all of the team members who assisted with this, thank you very much. I see some of our budget team in the back corner ready, probably with lots of data and information to provide us at any time. I know this is a team effort, and Patrick, thank you for your leadership and continuing to develop this community and to ensure that our citizens' needs are met. We appreciate that. All right, I will adjourn the special meeting and reconvene regular meeting, and we will move to administrative items. Anybody have something for agenda item 30, boards, commission, committee reports? Councilmember Cook.
Mayor, thank you. We had a very fantastic subcommittee for our sign code, and I think Victor will say, Councilmember Peterson will say that this is going to be an outstanding report that we'll have on the 29th. Councilmember Anderson, I did provide some language that he really liked, and I think it was a great compromise. So I think we're going to show a really wonderful new sign code moving forward that's going to be unbelievably business friendly. We're looking forward to sharing that with you at the next meeting.
I feel like it's like a boy band that we should be cheering on.
The one thing that was, we did put the staff through the ringer, as always, the grinding, but they did fantastic. Catherine, if you're here again, my sincere thanks. Kyle and Linda, obviously supported, Catherine through the whole, but Catherine did all the heavy lifting, and we look really forward to sharing that with you at the next
We'll bring the trio back together for another subcommittee when time is right. That sounds good. Anything else on number 30? All right, we will continue on to future meetings. We did receive an email communication on the requested June 15th assignment, and I know that staff was looking for feedback from us if there was additional, so make sure you get that to staff if you have additional questions. I think that's Hawken, right? Hawken was in charge of that. There you go. Awesome. Everything else looks like it's forthcoming. Any report from the town manager on current events?
Mayor, members of the council. No, I'd just like to reiterate your comments and gratitude to Kelly and her team. They did a great job. It is a huge undertaking. We appreciate all their hard work, all the additional work they did to help get you additional information so you could make an informed decision on this budget, as well as all of our department heads and their employees that put a lot of hours and a lot of time and energy into building these budgets and helped us present a balanced budget to you while meeting the needs that we have across all of the service lines that we deliver in Gilbert, Arizona. So thank you to them, and we're always glad to have this date behind us each year, and we'll only get about a 30-day reprieve, and we will actually start building the fiscal year 19 budget very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Any report from council on current events? And I have no update for you on current events either. So with that, oh, well, we introduced him at one of the last meetings. Sorry, we're going to call you out again, Chief Solberg. Just give us a wave. He's official wearing the Gilbert badge at this point. So thank you, Chief Solberg. All right, with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Because it did go through legal, so we were like, just curious. Basically, this is referring to a contract that was offered, and then